Everyone needs to understand that. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where to tell you to go. I just think that everyone needs to be aware of that. And I worry that too many people think that everything is going to be the same as it is today because they look at the past and say, well, things didn't change that much in the past.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work, episode 351. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. And you know what? We've got a special episode today. I'm going to skip a bunch of the pleasantries. If you like what we do, please go give us a like and a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. We don't typically do this, but I wanted to thank a good friend of AI in the Future of Work, podcast.today, for their help promoting AI in the Future of Work and sponsoring today's special episode. If you're looking for new podcasts to love and listen to, click on that link in the show notes and you'll get a curated daily newsletter from podcast.today. And more importantly, we have not had a special episode like this since that great one last year with John Chambers. This is another special one. I think you'll agree with me when you hear all about today's guest. Now, this one is also kind of special because as your professor here, I'm telling you, this is the 102 version. And a prerequisite for enjoying this one maximally is listening to the 101 version, which is episode 298 with today's guest. That goes back to season 5 last year in August. Go listen to that and then rejoin us. Nick Mehta is the legendary CEO of Gainsight, a company he joined more than 12 years ago and has since grown into a juggernaut in the space he really helped define, the customer success space. They have more than 20,000 customers, more than $100 million in ARR. I will say the internet is full of awesome Nick Mehta memes that I would say, in my humble opinion, rival only Google's Jeff Dean memes. If you know, you know. Nick and the team recently wrapped up year 12 of their Pulse customer conference in Vegas, where they launched a family of AI agents called Atlas. The event was obviously themed after the movie Wicked, which gave Nick the opportunity to sing, perform, and of course, dress like Ariana Grande. Nick, my friend, someone I consider a role model, and perhaps someday my future haberdasher. Welcome back to the podcast. Let's get started by having you fill us in. The last year, a little bit less than a year, how have things changed in your view?
Dan, so great to see you. I really enjoyed the last time we did this podcast episode. What was it? 240?
298. 351.
But this, by the way, like, can I just be clear that that your intro is at least half accurate. I think you embellished some of it. Very kind of you. And I don't know how the heck I ended up in a sentence with John Chambers, all-time legendary CEO. Have never run an all-time iconic company like Cisco. I did meet John once, and that was an incredible life dream to check that off the bucket list.
Yeah, but your car karaoke is better than his.
His West Virginia drawl beats mine though. So but it's great to be here. Yeah, it's been. I wasn't able to channel Ari. We had another Gainster who she was able to be more like Ariana in a little fun video we did. But I was the wizard, so that was cool. And so I was the man behind the curtain. There is actually another curtain, and I am so excited. Last year, so much is happening. We were talking in the pre-show about just I'm as deep into the rabbit hole as you can go about AI. I love what you're doing. And yeah, I'm just could nerd out about this forever because I'd be here.
Nick, one of your hallmarks is I know you take the whole podcast about being vulnerable as a leader, and you have a certain brand of authenticity. It's just who you are. I know it's not an act. And when you go on stage, people listen. And what would you say is hard about going on stage as an authentic, vulnerable leader these days when it's safe to assume that you have the same questions as everyone in the audience has, and yet you're expected to somehow have all the answers?
That's such an insightful question. Yeah, I think there's a two parts of that. I think there's a part that I was reflecting on very recently about the vulnerability thing, because vulnerability is not a binary on or off, right? Like, and there's like a level of like how much do you share? Obviously, there was a what I'll call kind of the old school business world, which is you share almost nothing. Like they don't even know you have a family or anything, right? Like, and then there's like one click further, social media kind of like empowered what I'd call my little pet term is vulnerable, FAU, vulnerability, full vulnerability, where it's just a little bit of vulnerability and you go deeper and deeper. And then at some point you're like, oh wait, is that too deep? Like, is that like hard for people to even understand what I'm talking about? Because sometimes it's hard for me to understand what I'm talking about to myself. And so, yeah, that's like always been a thing of like, what's that dial that will meet the audience where they're at? And each person in the audience is at a different place. So it's even harder. And then you're right. Then you get to this part where you're like, actually, we are all in a completely uncharted territory. People like me get up on stage and or on a podcast and somebody says, where is the world going to be in 5 years? And I'm like, the honest answer is no idea. And what gives me confidence is I don't know all these legends in the LLM world, but I've been at events where I've raised my hand politely or gone up to them and asked them, Sam Altman, Dario. I was at an event where I like totally celebrity stalked Jeffrey Hinton, who's like one of the original inventors of the back propagation algorithm and neural networking. I know, like I'm like the five people in the world who consider that a celebrity, but
I saw the LinkedIn post.
He won a Nobel Prize.
Selfie.
So for me, that's celebrity. And it's funny when you ask all these people, you're like, where are things going in 5 years? What is happening? How does this all work? Why does it work so well? And what's reassuring is they're like, I have no idea. Basically, I have no idea. You listen to all the podcasts, and it's almost like this, for me, this wonder, like we have no idea. We've hit the end of like the pre-written story. It's like watching Game of Thrones when you get past the part that that was written by George R.R. Martin, and you're now in the part where like the writer's like, what do we do now? George R.R. Martin stopped writing books. And we're in that same world now where we're like, nobody knows. And so I always laugh when I watch somebody very confidently say to the world what's going to happen in a few years. AI is overhyped, AI underhyped, never going to happen. It's going to happen tomorrow. I'm like, we have no idea. And you're right, Dan. That's hard because people expect you when you're on stage to tell them the answer.
You and I agree. The person who you referenced, the CEO of Anthropic, disagrees with us. Dario Amodei last week said, within 5 years, 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs will go away and unemployment will exceed 20%. That's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum of kind of being open to not having answers. What's your thought
it's funny
on that
because I asked him a question at a conference a year before that post, which I read, right? Since I read every single AI thing. And he was pretty less certain. I think there's some element where, I really respect him a lot in that I think he truly cares and is worried. And he's just trying to ring the alarm bell. I think that there's a legitimacy to saying, something significant could happen and it'd be maybe hard for us to appreciate. And what I feel like is the ends of the spectrum, neither do I agree with. So on one end is something like technology always creates more jobs than it destroys. Well, I'll be fine. Stop worrying. Okay, that's one end. I read a lot of that online. And then the other, and I'm like, that's not a law of physics. I've taken some physics classes and I missed the part where next to like the discussion about the nature of quantum physics, the next one was technology always creates more jobs. I missed the part where Newton discovered that when the apple hit him. And then on the other end, so it's not a law. It's just it happens to be in a pattern in the past, doesn't mean it will repeat. And on the other end is we're all dead and it's going to kill us all or something, right? And again, certainly that could happen. And an asteroid could hit us tomorrow and all kinds of things could happen. But I don't think that that's necessarily the most useful thing to do anything with. What I find more interesting is like significant changes will happen in the next N number of years, faster than most people appreciate, bigger than most people appreciate. Everyone needs to understand that. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where to tell you to go. I just think that everyone needs to be aware of that. And I worry that too many people think that everything is going to be the same as it is today because they look at the past and say, well, things didn't change that much in the past. I'm like, this isn't like the past.
In your role, you are creating a pattern, or you are a role model for a lot of other companies, bleeding edge. Certainly, I know that it is not hyperbole when you say you read everything between you and Nick GPT. You read everything about AI.
I'm obsessed. I have no life whatsoever. So I love this stuff so much.
More from it. So at Gainsight, you have a set of 5 unique and very memorable values. And one of them is childlike joy, which you describe as bring the inner child in you to work every day. Many out there are saying this is the last generation of managers that will only manage humans. You can take the over or the under on that. It doesn't really matter. When you think about your personal values and the values of the company, is something like that as genuine, or do we need to rethink? I mean, the fabric of the organizations that we're building, given the potential incursion of digital labor into the workforce.
Yeah, I mean, so do we need to rethink the way organizations work? Absolutely, no doubt about that. I mean, that seems. I would take the aggressive AI maximalist version of like that all will change how companies work, or what a company even is. By the way, that's a whole thing that is another level. I think one thing people miss is what I think of as like the nth order effects. Like this thing happens, and because of that, this thing happens. Because of that, this thing happens. And when you're in a world where you're like, oh, there's employees and there's tons of agents, and the agents are the more agents than employees, and it's a bunch of GPUs, and you start wondering what is a company and what's the nature of a company, and is it the same as what we think of as company today? So I think I don't know what the answer of all that, how it's going to play out. I just know that it's most likely going to be very significantly different from what we think of today. However, the counterpoint, it's not prediction, it's a hope, probably more than anything else, but a hope that may be grounded in some belief. I do think that like there's a possibility this causes a retrenchment and a more desire for like something that's more human, because so much will feel less human and more artificial, and we will aspire to it. So the analogy that I didn't come up with, but I think is such a good one, is this thing about, well, like, yes, AI surpassed humans in chess a long time ago when like Deep Blue and all that stuff came out, right? Way pre LLMs for people that are earlier in their careers. Is like you can Google it, long time ago. Gary Kasparov was beat by an IBM computer called Deep Blue. I mean, and but you go to a park and people are playing chess, and they're not nearly as good as any AI. Like the AI on your phone is better than like almost every human. But people watch on TV while these like human legends are playing chess, when your computer could beat any of those. And so there's this thing where I think there's still going to be this interesting desire for something human. And what's funny is it's kind of like when we watch sports, it's just fun. And there's the optimist argument is that, you know what, it's going to be a very significant adjustment period. I think we shouldn't minimize that. We should remember it's not going to be easy for people. It's not. And it's easier for some people, and privilege, it's easier, but it's going to be hard. However, there's a version of the world in the future where, yeah, we actually might have a really amazing life with a lot of childlike joy. I don't know how many years away that is. And I really hope we all work hard to get there and don't fall into a chasm in between. But I think there's a world where like N number of years from now, it's more human, not less.
It's more important than ever to celebrate the humanness in all of us, and encouraging the humans to bring their inner child to work, to me, is something that separates us from the non-humans.
Yeah.
Maybe at work. I think every time we give a human adjective to a non-human, we miss an opportunity to celebrate the human condition, the pain we feel, the pride we feel, the emotions we have. And I actually think, I mean, I don't ask the question, don't mean to answer my own question at all, but like I want you to bold all of those values, because you define those values based on the humans that you want to be part of your culture. And I agree that I'd want them to be part of my culture. And I think it's fair to dissociate them from things that, attributes of digital labor or whatever else, to make it clear that the bots only know what we teach them. They're there to support us, not replace us. And it's up to us to figure out, where are the gaps in things that we can do that can be supplemented by non-humans. But none of what they do, they have an off switch we don't. I mean, there are a lot of things that I just believe we should use this as an opportunity to distinguish the human condition.
I think that's so provocative. It's really interesting. One thing I don't know what that nature of our relationship to agents and AI bots and robots eventually are going to be. I don't actually know. But what's interesting is what encourages me is I do think that this is causing us to go back to the curiosity about the great questions. Like the great questions. Like you could argue that we went through this period where like a long time ago in Plato and Socrates and maybe eventually in Voltaire and Camus and all this philosophy and all these amazing people. And then we got to very practical stuff of how do we ship more of this and grow the GDP of that. And that's awesome. We brought up prosperity of so many humans. It's amazing. But it's possible we get to go back to those great questions of like beauty and art and virtue and all these things that like people thought about 2,000 years ago. And maybe we'll go back to that. And as somebody who loves that stuff, the revenge of the liberal arts and the humanities, I think it's interesting. People might think, oh, that must be he's some tech CEO, must be just like a tech guy. And I like it. I'm just into computer science. I love technology, but I equally, perhaps more, love the creativity, writing, poetry, philosophy. I love that stuff. And maybe there's more room for it now.
As the parent of two kids, I know you have two kids, but my kids' ages, but on the cusp of college or college aged.
Yeah.
I think there's no better time to get a liberal arts degree. Like you said, get
Seriously.
grounded in the science of ideas, right? Find something you're passionate about. I know as an employer, that's who I want to hire, right? I mean, I think you studied biochem, right?
Biochem and CS, yeah, which is funny. It's just practical, and I like them. They're great. They're also great. I have so much respect for scientists. But yeah, it's yeah. I think I always like. I was always a liberal arts curious, raised by amazing parents who were like science, engineering, business, and I'm glad and I'm very fortunate that lots of ways in my life. But also, yes, on the side, I write poetry. And by the way, hilariously, Dan, and I don't know if I told this story. I wrote maybe I told you when we went for a walk. I read poetry, and then I actually give it to ChatGPT to give me feedback. I don't have it write my own write poetry for me though, because I like writing my own stuff. Maybe it's better at me. I don't care.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's one of the beautiful things about art. I don't want to take poetry advice from a bot. I'll give the bot poetry advice, but what you see beauty in is where there's beauty.
Exactly. I love it.
I heard you tell a great story. All this is obviously just unprompted, and hope you don't mind, but about your dad and how he kind of inspired you, but had really high expectations for you. Talk a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, totally. My dad, some parents from India. I grew up in India. They grew up in India. I was born in the U.S. And my dad moved here in '69. He's passed away now, but amazing person. And then my mom came here after they got married in '72. So they were here a long time. They were Americans for much more of their life than they were Indians. And my mom's still around. And but that's when my dad, like literally the classic, like true immigrant story. I mean, he told me, I believe him, although he did embellish sometimes. He was very poor as a kid growing up in a house where they had like a 2-bedroom house and they had like 20 various extended family members living there and they're sleeping on the floor. And he's, when the power would go out in their house, he would go read under a street lamp. And I mean, like serious, just stuff that's unimaginable, right? For people growing up here, particularly, my family, right? And then he comes here, and yeah, you could see how that immigrant story creates a different pattern, which is like, God, like you got to be successful and achieve and all that. So yeah, of course, I was then raised in it's amazing when sometimes you get together and how much commonality there is when your parents were first generation and also didn't come from economic means. And it's just it's not a better or worse life arc. It's just a different and unique one. And when I talk to people, it almost doesn't matter whether they're families from India or somewhere else. It's just when they came from that background, it's just an interesting common set of things. Like, hey, you got to work hard. You got to go be successful, got to go and make money. My dad may have taken it to an extreme. The story you're referring to is when I was a kid, and I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was probably like 8 or 9 years old, and there's a thing called a magazine, kids, for people that don't know what that is. It's a printed thing that you would read and flip through, and then it was like the internet, but like in print. And then there was a magazine called Time Magazine, which was like it actually still exists. I think Benioff owns it now. And the cover said like Person of the Year, or I think at that point it said Man of the Year, and it was like Bill Gates, and it said youngest self-made billionaire. And I remember my dad saying, "Oh, I'd love for you to be like this someday." And I didn't know that that was an impossible dream. Not impossible, but pretty darn hard. So he may have set the bar forever high, but I still love him for it because it definitely helped me strive and gave me a lot of what I have now.
Made you who you are. I love that story. Thanks for sharing. So you mentioned Voltaire and Camus. So that gives me license to talk about Marx.
Oh yeah, sure.
I mean, no other guest. Can I go to Marx? We may. It's 350, and so far we haven't been canceled. So he talks about the proletariat, the labor, and basically sell your labor to capital,
right,
as a means of income or subsistence. When we look out 10 years, Marx talked about the uprising of the proletariat, overthrow the capital. Who's the capital? Is it the AI? Is it us? Is it the entrepreneurs? I mean, there aren't really robber barons anymore, so who's the capital? I think it's pretty clear who the proletariat is, and you and I may be part of it soon. Just like it just feels oddly relevant to Marxist philosophy. Just would genuinely love to get your perspective on how that plays out in society.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think about this question all the time, and I definitely don't have the answers. I'll say that upfront because I don't think any of us have the answer. But you're asking such good questions, because in the short term, there's a question of labor versus capital. It's always been there in economics. whether you're talking about Marx or even going back to Keynes or Adam Smith, it's like the same thing: labor and capital, right? And then the question is, way down the road, are those terms the same thing anymore in a potentially post-work society? So I'll come back to that in a second. I do think that what is, like, I think most economists would agree, is in the last 20 or 30 years, capital kicked labor's butt. Like average real wages adjusted for inflation have barely grown. And yes, the stock market and every other measure of capital and assets soared. So it's almost impossible to argue that capital is not winning this battle over the last 20-ish years, right? And you can have lots of different reasons why. Low interest rates probably shift value to capital over time, even though short term they feel good. Whatever, you can have a million different explanations. But what is true is that the wages have not kept up anywhere close to capital, and that's why for a lot of people it's hard to buy a house and things like that. It's serious stuff. And I think that there's a world where in the near term that could get worse, because one of the things that's true is, like, where capital does well is when you have a very high return on capital, where basically by having money, you can, and buying, in the case of, let's say you buy a factory back in the Marx days, right? And you can buy a factory and spend this money and have some amount of labor, and you can get a lot of return out of that factory. That's great. That's how the robber barons and the steel companies and the oil companies and the railroads and all those things, all those people made money. And then, but if you look at the equivalent, if you own a bunch of GPUs in an LLM factory, so to speak, it's possible, not yet because they're not making huge amounts of profit, but it's possible they'll make crazy amounts of money. And therefore, return on capital grow even more, like that we will be in a world where capital will keep growing. The stock market continues to soar. we're in like all-time highs every day. I mean, right now, right? Despite crazy economic uncertainty, crazy labor uncertainty, stock market soars every day. There's something going on. We know there's something going on. I don't know what it is. But I think there's a world where in the near term, you could see capital soaring. Now, there's definitely a further out scenario, which is like, okay, well, what does it mean to have capital? Who owns the AI? Do the AI own themselves? These are point of, like, it's almost impossible to predict at some point. It's too far out to know what would look like at that point. Do they have their own capital? Do they have their own economy? Right? Like these are they're just party conversations at this point. Nobody knows what will happen. But I do think that the next few years, there's a good scenario where capital continues to just skyrocket. And that does mean that we have to watch out because, yes, the thing that is true, Marx may not have been right about like the perfect system, or not. I'm not going to even claim. I have no idea. But I think what is true is, yeah, at some level of unemployment and wage inequality and all that, the people aren't happy anymore. And there's a world where you got to be careful about that. I just read about the French Revolution and you will realize, and I'm not saying, by the way, again, I'm not trying to be some doomsday or anything. I have no idea. All I know is there's a level at which it's not sustainable. I don't know if we're there yet, but we just have to be careful and thoughtful is all I would say.
This is two AI enthusiasts talking, but it's a real conversation. I think.
Well, it's weird. I'm like, did you ever read Three Body Problem?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. There you go. So this is such a nerd test, right? So book 2, I won't say too much about it if people haven't read it, but greatest sci-fi series of all time, in my opinion. But that about aliens coming there, it's incredible physics, all kinds of economy. And there's this in book 2, this thing called Great Ravine, where they realize aliens are coming and they have to adjust, and this adjustment period is brutal for the world. And I was telling my sister-in-law, who's not deep in AI, but she's a doctor and she's also a sci-fi nerd. And she's like, yeah, I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be a hard few years. And she's like, oh, like the Great Ravine. I was like, oh my God, Maya, you're right. That's the perfect analogy. And hopefully it's not too long of a ravine and too deep of a ravine. But yeah, it's going to be an adjustment. And like, I think the thing that I don't like is the like, don't worry, everything will be fine for everyone all the time, because it always is. You know what, Dan? People reach out to me all the time on LinkedIn for roles. And in tech, in knowledge work, which I think is the beginning of all of this in terms of the impact, it's pretty brutal. It's brutal. Like it's heartbreakingly brutal. And people don't appreciate that because maybe the people that are writing those blog posts and saying everything will be fine, for them, it's not brutal. For me, it's not brutal. But I see all these other people, it's brutal, and I definitely have a lot of empathy. It's not all AI. It's a mix of like the tech overhang, too much funding in the older businesses, interest rates going up, global economic uncertainty, tariffs, geopolitical instability, and AI. But the net is, in a world where Microsoft is at an all-time high as a stock price and just announced another 9,000 person layoff, I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong, by the way. Like they're probably doing the right things, but that's a sign of something. Somebody wrote recently, like, is Microsoft at their all-time high of headcount? Will there be one day, a few years from now, be a $10 trillion company market cap wise with half the people, right? And as that ratio gets more and more absurd, you stop believing everything will be fine for everyone. I just don't think that that's realistic, So.
Work is just such a fundamental part of the human condition, and
that's really a huge thing too. Yeah,
even if Dario is an order of magnitude off, the fact is very soon you'll be able to produce 5 days worth of output in, let's say, 4 days.
Yeah,
and we've never, just as a species, certainly not in the modern era, had a choice to make. Do you produce 20% more? Do you do something else with the 5th day? We're really right on the cusp of having to make that kind of decision, which impacts how we think about who we are and why we're here. How do you pencil through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly right. And by the way, like, let me just give the other case. The bull case, the case that everything will be fine is that this creates so much productivity that GDP grows so much. And as long as there's good government policy, which is an extremely big asterisk, then enough of that money comes back into the system, and then therefore everyone's fine, right? That's the bull case. If GDP is growing 10% a year or something, then yeah, probably everyone is fine. But if it's not all recapped, either if it's not growing as much, or if it's not all, if it's all concentrating to a very small percentage of people, then we are in a challenging time for a lot of people. And then I think you hit on another point though, Dan, which is you can even go so far as to say, hey, we have solved the feeding people and housing people problem through other means, like some government subsidies, universal basic income, or some other smarter thing that I couldn't even come up with. You have this other issue of like meaning and identity. Hey Dan, nice to meet you. Oh, what do you do, Dan? In America, by the way, it's interesting. I don't think it's actually, I've talked to people from other countries. It's not the first question in other countries. But for a lot of people watching this probably in America, it's the first question in almost every cocktail party amongst the, the knowledge working people. What do you do? And what happens when that answer is nothing? Don't know. There's this really great book if for folks want like to look at things from a different vantage point. It's Player Piano. Did you ever read it? It's Kurt Vonnegut. It's a long time, 1950s. It's crazy how in some ways this book is totally wrong in one way and totally prescient in another. So it's about a future society where things are automated. Now, what Vonnegut got wrong, which almost everyone got wrong up till 5 years ago, is that the thing that would be automated is the physical labor. So in this world, this alternate reality, all of the machines have automated factories and all the physical work, right? And so all those people that did physical work don't have jobs, and they're essentially on a version of universal basic income in this book. Now, so that's what they got wrong. Obviously, it's most likely the opposite now, where the physical work is probably fine for some period of time because hard to build real world robots, much easier to automate knowledge work. The thing that that was very thought provoking, though, was in the book, which I highly recommend. It's a really interesting read. It's a very quick read. I love Vonnegut, so I'm probably biased. But he writes about the idea that you ended up in this two-class system. Because in this world, they created a universal basic income equivalent, but it was very two-class. You get tested when you're really young, and you're either going to be in this like managerial engineering class that will have real jobs, or you will be in this other class that you're on a public support system. And they literally go so far as to live in another part of the town. So they have like two parts of the town. It's very interesting. And the protagonist in the book ends up, who's one of these engineer type people, like that was born with the right mental skills, whatever. He goes into the other side of town where nobody's working. And he goes into a bar, and the bartender, who's like basically just working out of theater, and he's on this universal basic income equivalent. The bartender says to this guy, I think his name's Paul, he says, I don't like you because you are those people, that class that looks down on us. And I really don't like it because before, this is so fascinating. He says, before the world was unequal because, the rich could do more than the poor. But at least I had a hope of being rich. I could be rich someday. In this book, the guy says, I don't ever have a hope of being smarter. And the actual reality of what's going to play out is going to be totally different because it's not, it's knowledge work that's going to be automated. But this idea that like it's identity, it's like this like perception that I'm forgotten, I'm left behind. Even if you're going to pay for my food and my housing, that doesn't like give me my meaning. Now, is there a post-work meaning? I hope so. I think going back to creativity and arts and all that. But I think it's like we've been like, go back to my dad's thing, right? Like the Time magazine thing. We have been raised in America, particularly, but probably across the world, that your work is who you are for a lot of us, not all of us. I think there are a lot of people who are way beyond that, and I respect those people. But the people that are like, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your title, your school, your GPA, your SAT, that's who you are. That reflects your worth, your income. And it's going to be a hard adjustment for people. And I say that not having any prescience of belief of what's going to happen. Like Dario, I'm not nearly as smart as he is. Nor do I think it's all going to be fine and everything will be okay. I don't know. I hope so. But nor do I think robots are going to go kill us all. I don't think they will. I don't know. But all I know is we should have empathy for this, the fact that this could be really hard for people. That's what I hope for people. I hope we just have more empathy.
That's exactly the way I talk about it. I want us to just have a candid conversation. It should not be a taboo subject to say, think about maybe finding purpose in a hobby, a charity. Maybe it's investing more time in your aging parents, or pursuing another skill. Play the piano, learn a language. Things like like you said, the dinner party conversation. It should be more interesting and it doesn't start and end with work. And I think that's the opportunity. It shouldn't be perceived as a threat, even though it's a tricky topic.
Yeah, I really do hope that, n number of years from now, 20, 30, we will cross that great ravine and it will be this amazing society where we have a different version of life and maybe a different and more optimistic and more utopian world. And I really just really hope we get there. I hope we get there. We don't get stuck in that ravine because of us letting it go too far and being too callous and too careless.
The thing that confuses me is that just take sample size of 2. You and I are AI enthusiasts. We're also marauding capitalists, and we have investors that are expecting profits from what we do. We vote with our calendars. We every day we're voting about the future of work. And so, like, just in Nick's case, when you're doing headcount planning for 2026, you want to increase margins and you want to increase ARR and NRR and everything else that you should be doing. And maybe through some of these, emergent properties of AI, you can use technology to do things that maybe aren't, in the best interest of having more humans, bringing
Exactly.
childlike wonder to work. Like, how do you think about the daily decisions that we're making that actually are filling in some of the open questions?
Well, I think one thing is true, which is if you thought about it more, I like the question because it's more practical. In the micro as a leader, it doesn't serve anyone to just hire extra people that you will later on have to lay off. So that part I think is not to me. It's a good decision. It's prudent to hire people that make sense, but not to hire people just because that's what you want to do is hire more people. And I think we went through a big boom of that from sort of the 2021, 2022 era. And unfortunately, a lot of people paid the price and lots of layoffs and all that. So I think now we have this weird thing where it's sometimes in life, it's hard to know what is the cause of things because too many things happen at once. In tech, we're coming off this crazy bubble in the what I'll call the pre-AI tech. Like the AI first companies are in a totally different world, but the most tech employment, like 99%, 99.9% is in this like traditional software companies like mine and yours and others, right? That we're all AIifying, but that's different. And I think that we all had this huge amount of hiring, and then folks unfortunately had to downsize. And then you have like less certainty about the future of growth prospects. And then you have geopolitical and tariffs and macroeconomics. And then you're like, AI is an opportunity for us to grow revenue. We can build new products. AI is also a way for us to need less people. And also creating uncertainty about our own growth prospects. And so, yes, I think the reality is most CEOs and investors are like, I have no idea what to do. That's you mentioned up front, the stage, being on stage and being vulnerable. I think like what CEOs and investors will not tell you is for the most part, they have no idea right now what to do. They had a playbook for a long time, which was something like there's a spreadsheet and has a rows and cells and you project a trend forward of something of leads or customers or something and revenue and NRR and you draw that forward in that trend line. Maybe it was a little better than the trend line or a little worse. And all of a sudden you're like, my visibility, it's like flying or driving in like thick fog where all you want to do is just not hit a deer on the road all of a sudden, right? Because you don't even know, you can't forget about seeing like 2 miles ahead, or in this case, like 2 or 3 years ahead. It's like, you just don't want to like accidentally hit a dead end. On the flip side, what you see, and this is, I think, probably what you're thinking a lot about too, Dan, and a lot of the people are, you see the opportunity to help your customers with these new things, these new AI first agentic type stuff is off the charts amazing. Like so in our case, you mentioned we launched this thing. It's early, it's an alpha. It's called Atlas, and it's a family of agents to essentially be able to automate a lot of the tasks, not full jobs, because I don't think we're there yet, but tasks involved in managing customers, onboarding, renewal, adoption, et cetera, right? What's interesting is, we hired I heard a great president a year and a half ago, and he and I have known each other forever, and both of us are super passionate about this. He hired a great CTO last December. And we bought a small company called Staircase.ai that kind of brought some AI talent as well. So late last year. And so we're working on this. And then we announced this kind of strategy and stuff at our Pulse conference in May. So literally, as we're recording this, just, month-ish ago. And we're like, hey, it's not ready yet. It's in alpha. We've got a few pilot customers sign up for the wait list, your classic wait list thing, right? We're like, hey, maybe some people sign up. Everyone signed up. Like basically, there's like a little Google form link. Everyone signed up. Like our wait list is like unmanageable because it's too many people. And I think that's true for all of these new agentic value props. They're just so good, to be able to go to a customer, like one of our customers that was on stage is DocuSign, and we're working with them on their long tail, their smaller customers. The value prop of DocuSign being able to manage those large customers more efficiently and effectively is off the charts good, right? And this isn't giving their team a tool like we do today, which is also very valuable. This is value that's 10 or 100x better in terms of ROI from what we traditionally deliver. And so what CEOs and investors are thinking is, I've got my existing business, which is going to keep growing, but I don't know how fast. I also don't know how many people to put into it. I also don't know if I need more people or if I can use AI. And I've got these new things where I'm like, I want to put infinite capital into it. And that's what you're seeing in the VC world, which is almost all investment is going into AI first companies. Like it's very little investment now goes into anything that's not truly agentic or AI first. And they're seeing the growth rates. I mean, I think some folks watching probably heard of a company called Cursor, which is a way to, an AI slash agentic coding of various kinds. And there's several other alternatives as well. But Cursor got to like 500 million in ARR over, I don't know, 6 or 8 months of selling. I mean, things that I don't know what you did. Maybe you guys got to 500 million in 6 months. I didn't. That is like a level. It's kind of like you're like a little elementary school playing basketball, and then like all of a sudden LeBron James is on the court with you or whoever. Pick your favorite basketball player. And I'm like, you see these AI first businesses, you're like, they're so much better. There's no reason why everyone shouldn't go build an agentic business if they can. So,
Nick, I think that was a teaser for the 103 version of this course. We're gonna.
Oh my gosh,
we're gonna pick up there. All right,
we can talk forever.
Yeah, it's like a whole Coursera thing we got going here. That was brilliant. I love the answer, and maybe I don't know, maybe or maybe not. When we get you on here next time, we'll have some probably more questions than answers, but lots of questions remain unanswered.
One thing I'll say as a closing is I do think that, I don't know how next time we'll chat, but like, any glad to any time, the rate of change is so fast that I know that 99% of what I said in this podcast is not going to be right, or is going to be wrong, or is going to be early or late, and I just don't know what part. So the willingness and humility that we're going to be wrong a lot is also, I think, going to be important in this next phase.
I hope that when you come back on, we're not talking about the proletariat uprising.
I hope not yet. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Nick, I can't let you off the hot seat before answering two last important questions. As part of getting ready for this podcast, I asked a few Gainster friends, what questions should I ask Nick? And I'm just going to pick two in the interest of time. But
sure.
But offline, I should share them all with you. Ask Nick about why he likes having an open pit fire at team offsites. Now, just out of context, that seemed kind of weird, but hey, any commentary on that, assuming that's even true?
I do. That is I have a guest who's asked that, and it's funny. Daddy's a really good one. You went. That's a deep cut, Dan. Okay, so yes, I am like a big believer in the like physicality of human connection, like literally the geometry of a table, size of a table, the room, the acoustics of a room, the height of a ceiling, all these nerdy things. Like when we got on this podcast, you were asking me about like, can I put my earphones in because there's a slight echo. So yeah, I have that same nerdiness about that. And I am waxed poetic about how, yes, there is a reason why humans get around a fire and talk and they open up. And it's a little bit of like, you're not looking at each other, and the fire and the warmth and the like, I don't exactly know what it is, but yeah, give me a fire pit and some scotch any day and twice on Sunday.
Brilliant. I had a feeling it would be an interesting answer. Last one. And maybe for 103, we'll pull out more of these as well. Ask Nick why he frequently gets pied in the face before Pulse. Does that?
Oh my gosh!
Does that make any sense to you?
It does, but that's really old. That's a like literally 2016 era time frame, I believe. It wasn't frequent. It was actually, I think it was a one time or maybe a couple times thing where we did this. There was, I don't remember if it was pie or slime, but there was this challenge. I have a customer who I love, and he's a huge Patriots fan, New England Patriots, and I'm a huge Steelers fan. And that was back in the Tom Brady era where they would destroy us every time. And so we had a rivalry, and it was basically that, hey, if the Steelers, we were playing that year, and Steelers, Patriots, and, if we lost, then I would have to wear a Tom Brady jersey at Pulse. So my friend Mark, if you're listening, he like sent me the jersey. I put it at the TB12 jersey. I put it on, And I go on stage and I make sure Mark's in the audience. And I say, hey, Mark, I just everyone else know I'm not a Patriot fan, but I'm just settling a bet. I got to wear this. And then I immediately had my team come on stage and dump a slime bucket on me. So that if I was going to wear a Patriots jersey on stage, I was also going to destroy it on stage. Said, take that, Mark.
Mission
I love you.
accomplished.
I love you, Mark, by the way, if you're watching.
I know there are so many stories that we
So
could tell.
many over
And,
so many years. Yeah.
thankfully, we're doing many more versions of this. Nick, my friend, great work as always. Thank you for just doing what you do, being a good human. All right.
Shame to you, man. I love talking to you.
This was fun.
Same
Well, gosh, that was more than all the time we have for this week on AI and the future of work. But hope you enjoyed this one as much as Nick and I enjoyed taping it. Of course, Dan Turchin from People Rain, and we are back next week with another fascinating guest.